So here we all are. Oh. Good. Our internet's a little bit slow, but I can see Padmalkar and Kama City, Manjurava. Yeah. Sujayini. So we'll just let you settle down and hopefully this screen settle down. In the last session, after Ananta said that it was 32 degrees, we were asking.
No, he didn't say it was 32.
Sorry, he said it was a blizzard and there's about what, 20 inches of snow or something. Yeah. We were just talking to Sadarichi in Cuernavaca in Mexico, and it's 32 degrees there. So we have a variety of experiences between us. All right, so let's start in. So we're gradually working our way through the advice in the various sections. So in session 3, the previous session, we did be grateful to everyone, number 13. And we're going to leave the other 3 bits of advice about transforming bad circumstances into the way of awakening till March. And we're going to go on to section 4, looking at utilizing the practice in your whole life. So in this retreat, we'll look at doing that in your life, and then, which is number 17. And then in March, we'll look at using the same 5 powers at the time of death. So I'm hoping that this evening I'll cover number 17, and I might even be able to slip in 1 or 2 of your questions, which are coming in. If you have questions brewing, if you manage to formulate them soon, it'd be good to let me have them. Then I know I've got some idea of what I'd like to be able to answer. Often at the end of a retreat, I'm left with a whole lot of unanswered questions, but then maybe a week later or 2 weeks later, the questioner gets an email from me saying, oh, about that question, I think this, and this. But I'm hoping that very shortly after this retreat, I'll be going back into personal retreat for the rest of February. So if I don't manage to answer the questions over the next few days, I'm not sure I'll want to carry them over into March. So this may be it. So yeah, if you've got questions, the sooner the better. Let's put it like that. Okay, so let's have a look at the first part of section 4. So this is utilizing or applying the practice in your whole life. And in this version, it says the condensed heart instructions, so the sort of the pith instructions of how to practice, are the 5 powers. Practice them. It's nice and straightforward. And then in the brackets, you've got a little reminder of kind of what these 5 powers might be about. Again, I think that the translations that are here aren't necessarily the best ones, so I'm not going to use those. Maybe by the end of the retreat, we might have been able to update this text for you a little bit. Okay, so we're looking at how to apply ultimate and relative bodhicitta wisdom and compassion, the whole mind training throughout our life. Yeah. And we can break that down and say throughout our day. So it's both. It's the big picture, and it's also today, how are we going to do it? And these are quite general. They're not, a lot of the detail is either in the section 2 about the main practice, or section 3 about transforming bad circumstances, or it's in a lot of the detailed points that we get in the later sections, 6 and 7, where there's lots of very specific things that we can look at. But this is big picture, a sense of the progress of how we build momentum with this, how we build momentum with the mind training, how we build the momentum of compassion, how we build the momentum of opening our heart, how we build momentum of seeing more and more clearly so that we're not taken in by how things appear. So these 5 powers, these 5 heart instructions, the first one is the power of what's called the motor, or the impulse. And this is, so this motor or impulse, it's like what starts, what drives the whole process. A motor drives your car along, in a sense. It's what provides the power for it. So this is the force of, well, it's sometimes called intention. It's like whatever we do, whatever project we take on, in fact, almost whatever movement we make, there's some kind of intention that starts it off. Yeah. But this isn't just a vague intention. Yeah. This is something which got as much of the force of our being behind it as possible. So we could also say that the motor or the impulse is the force of resolve, or the force of commitment. Yeah. It's sort of on the level of, when we went for refuge, when we, in the private ordination, the public ordination, that sense of, I'm going to do this. This is what I'm doing with my life. It's got that sort of weight behind it. So that's what we're aiming to bring. And here it's specifically the commitment, the resolve, the deep intention to practice the 2 aspects of bodhicitta. So in sort of like in shorthand, to practice wisdom and compassion, those 2 aspects. And that resolve, that commitment, is to practice wisdom and compassion for as long as it takes. For as long as it takes to gain awakening, and for as long as it takes for there to be no suffering that we can find in ourselves, but in our experience. In any of the dreamlike appearances that manifest, we just keep going until there is no suffering. So that's the really big picture. So that could be kalpas, if you like. But then we break it down. So for this life, okay, this is what our life is about. It's about wisdom and compassion. That's really, when it comes down to it, that's what we're centering our life on. That's what's at the center of our mandala. That's what's driving us. But then we also, when you have a big project like that, when you have any big project, you break it down, into sort of bite-sized chunks, no matter what it is. So we need to break that down. So there's the resolve, the commitment to practice, to focus on wisdom and compassion for 2021. There's the resolve, the commitment to focus on wisdom and compassion for February. There's the resolve, the commitment to focus on wisdom and compassion and practice it for today, or for the next 24 hours, let's say. Yeah. And the aim is that at the beginning of each day, you come back in contact with that at the start of the day. Yeah. So you come back to that, that manifestation of going for refuge that is not just going for refuge for yourself, but for all beings. Yeah. You come back to that. And at the beginning of each day, you reinforce that, you put more energy into it. Yeah. Just day after day after day. So the big picture is, yes, we are wanting to gain awakening for all sentient beings. The immediate thing is, okay, today I'm going to do my best to stay in contact with how things are, to see that ego clinging, can never work, because we can never find that me that stands behind experience that we're concerned about. Yeah, to be aware that things aren't as solid as they seem, that they are dreamlike, and to carry that into whatever we do today, to breakfast, whatever it is, whatever our day consists of. And similarly, to have an open heart, to be as much as possible open to, even at the service of, whoever we're in contact with today. Yeah. The idea of all sentient beings, in a way, kind of breaks down to the person or people that we're with right now. Yeah. Can we, with this person that we're with right now, can we keep an open heart to them? Can we be aware of them? Can we empathize with them? Can we care for them? So that's the initial impetus, that's the initial impulse, the motor. And then the second one is the force of, let's call it familiarization or habituation. Yeah. So we get used to this perspective, we get used to this attitude, this stance to life. We get used to, again and again and again, seeing things from the point of view of bodhicitta. And we get used to also awareness, mindfulness, which is keeping in mind bodhicitta. And this is part of this familiarization. And through doing this again and again and again, we start to establish a positive habit. Our mind starts to become accustomed, our heart starts to become accustomed to approaching life from wisdom and compassion. So it's not just that, okay, at the beginning of the day, I remember bodhicitta. Yeah, it's like I'm keeping then a mindfulness as much as I can. It's going to come and go inevitably, but as much as I can, I'm keeping mindful of that resolve. I'm keeping mindful of that's how I want to live. And we keep coming back to it and back to it and back to it. When we lose it, we reestablish it. And in that way, our mind becomes familiar with it. Our heart becomes used to that open, generous way of interacting. So that's the force of familiarization, as it's called. And then the third one is what's called the force of the white seed. So this is about going into action. We take that awareness, that mindfulness and that commitment, and we then carry it out in thoughts and words and actions that come from it, that express it. So we act from that much wider view of life, where it's not about, am I okay here? Is this all right? Do I feel comfortable? Yeah, we're really opening into something much wider, and we're following through. You know, we're acting from an open heart. We're speaking as much as we can from an open heart. And the texts and the commentaries tend to emphasize that this isn't, it's a bit like this one of the aspects of virya, of energy, is simply that it's not satisfied. It just wants to keep going. So it's the same with this. It's like, it's not like being a Boy Scout where you feel like, oh, I've done my good deed for the day. Yeah, you just keep going. Yeah, it's that impetus to just keep acting out of seeing the suffering of things, seeing that how that can come to an end, and letting that open our heart to whoever we meet and acting out of that. So that's the sort of positive side of the action. And then the fourth one is the force of renunciation, which is also noticing all the ways in which we still kind of avoid following through on that commitment, following through on what's really important to us, all the ways we get sidetracked, all the ways we wander off. And as Dharma practitioners, we're really good in so many ways. We tend to be generally pretty ethical. We often can be very generous, but there are often all sorts of just little kind of hidey holes, little kind of places where the self-clinging just sort of can still express itself, and we kind of quietly, I was going to say skillfully, but it's quite unskillful, cleverly manage to kind of preserve these little bits. Yeah. It's a bit like someone who kind of gives everything away, but they're quietly sort of putting, sort of few notes under the sofa here, and a few more notes for themselves, sort of in the biscuit tin over there. There are just all those moments in the day where, yeah, you find an opportunity to just be a little bit kind of sharp with somebody, and it's all right, it's not horrible, or those little moments we just drift off into some comfortable little world. And I don't want to be all sort of hard about these things, because we're so often hard about ourselves and it doesn't work. But it is good to notice those places where we just lose energy. We really lose energy out of what we're trying to do, is build this momentum. Yeah, build this eventually unstoppable kind of momentum from the heart. Yeah? And a momentum of seeing so clearly how things are that it can't be lost. That's what we're going for. So we don't want to have all that sort of just drift away, that energy here and there in little things. So part of the mindfulness is bringing that out and doing what we can just to let it go. Yeah? Not that we have to be, active 24 hours a day doing things for sentient beings. That's not it. Our mind will get very tense, and that won't help. but we just notice where our tendencies are to fall back into the old kind of comfort zone of ego clinging. And yeah, let's just put a question mark against those and see if we can rescue the energy out of that and really use it. So there's the force of renunciation. And then the last one is the force of what in Tibetan is called the wishing prayer, Mönlam. Yeah, this is really sort of dedication. That's what it is here. So at the beginning of the day and through the day, we keep coming back to our commitment, our resolve. And then certainly at the end of the day and any other time that we like, it's like we dedicate, all that we've done that's good, all the actions that we performed, the force of the white seed. We don't hold it back. We share all that. May all sentient beings find the path to awakening. May they all be free. May they all be at ease. May they all be peaceful. Yeah, we just offer that. And one way in which it's sometimes thought of is that we're offering that into the great, it's like there's a great sort of reservoir of all the merits of all the realized practitioners and Buddhas and Bodhisattvas and everyone who's ever practiced the Dharma or done a good deed. And it's like we take whatever we've done, we just add it to that. Yeah. It's like we're adding to that great sort of reservoir of positive energy. And that also has the effect of preventing us from having another little kind of ego attack where we've done all these really good things. We have really opened our hearts and we've really cared for people. But then our sort of ego clinging comes in at the end and claims the credit for that. Yeah. It's a bit like people who've done really kind of good things. In the UK, they may be invited along to a reception at 10 Downing Street, the Prime Minister, and the Prime Minister makes sure that they, get their photo taken with these people who have done something heroic or who've, been amazing sports people or something. And then somehow there's the sort of reflected glory. In fact, somehow the Prime Minister ends up standing at the front in the middle and the others are there, but they're further back. So it's a bit like our ego clinging tendency kind of comes in and takes the credit for what happened when it wasn't there, really, if you see what I mean. Yeah. So the force of the wishing prayer is just so that, that energy that we've really put in continues into adding to the momentum of our bodhicitta practice. Okay, so we got the motor, the initial resolve, commitment, impulse, intention, the familiarization, where with mindfulness we keep in touch with that commitment and start to really take it deeper and deeper into our minds, and into our heart mind. Then there's the force of the white seed when we're acting out of that, which then strengthens the whole thing. And we're also noticing all those ways in which our energy kind of gets lost and doing our best to let go of those with the force of renunciation. And then there's the force of the wishing prayer or dedication. And yeah, that's a way to practice from now until awakening, but it's also a way to practice through a day. Yeah. And I think for me, what helps me the most almost is just to get this sense of a building of momentum, a building of energy behind what actually I really deeply care about, and staying in touch with that and not letting that just get diverted here and there, and feeling how satisfying that is. Satisfying for me, but also satisfying because that energy can then have a real impact on the world, and that's really satisfying. Okay, so that's maybe, yeah, that will do for that for now. How are we doing? Yes, I'm going to do 1 or 2 questions. So let's see what we have here. Oh yes, there's a sort of question come reflection from somebody. I don't think I've got time to really unpack it, but they say, is self-metta, which I mentioned a day or so back, not really a contradiction in terms? Bhante made the point that metta cannot be owned. It's never ours. So where is self-metta coming from? Is it really about faith and going beyond ourself? Is it really possible to overcome a poor self-view with self-metta? Self-affirmations can prove brittle, and maybe the phrases we use in the first stage of the metta bhavana can be brittle too. Do we actually have to find a way to bring something other into play? So there's an awful lot to unpack in that, and I'm not going to try and do it justice, sadly. The whole area, there are contradictions in there. You know? So I do metta for myself, and that already is a little strange. You know, how many of me are there in here? I do metta for myself. I know some people actually find that they can't practice self-metta in that way. They can't, as it were, direct metta to themselves as an object, as it were. And they focus more on really developing a sense of well-being. But it also does seem to be true that if somebody comes along and they learn the metta bhavana and they do have low self-image and they don't care for themselves very much, and they practice the first stage of the metta regularly, it does have a real effect. Yeah? They do become happier, freer, easier in themselves. So something clearly works in there. But I also wonder whether you can have a kind of complete self-metta, because it is all based on a misunderstanding. It's all based on a delusion of a self that can be completely positively transformed. And because if I'm doing a metta for a self which feels like it's sort of somehow separated itself out from the rest of life, that already, there's a sort of uneasy sense when I do that, when I have a sense of me in here, that it isn't quite right. You know, having a sense of self in that way always gives a sense of insecurity, because that isn't actually the nature of things. Yeah? So how far we can, you know, really develop self-metta when that view is based on something that isn't correct, I don't know. I'm a bit doubtful about that. And certainly, as practice goes deeper, if we start finding, as it were, a deeper source of metta and being filled with that, that's likely to take us further and deeper. Anyway, there's just a few quick thoughts about that one. Any suggestions for how to imagine all beings being free from suffering? You said that in meditation a little while ago. Yeah, so it is a really important aspect of the giving and receiving, the Tonglen practice, that we imagine the practice really having an effect. Yeah. And some beginners may go, well, you know, how does me sitting on my meditation cushion, you know, wishing nice things, how does that have an effect on the world? That isn't the point. Yes, we're practicing to train our minds, and in any kind of training, it really helps to visualize what you want to bring about. Yeah. So we really want to, as the meditation progresses, yeah, see, feel these beings with whom we're practicing the exchange becoming freer, easier, lighter, more loving, more joyful, yeah, clearer. And it doesn't even necessarily have to take a very long time. Yeah. We have a kind of idea that, you know, it must take a really long time for this to happen. But in the practice, it needn't do that. Yeah. And it really helps to balance things out. You know, we start in the practice focusing on suffering. It's like we focus on the first two noble truths. But if all our practice involves focusing on the first two noble truths, that's really unbalanced. And we're also likely to emerge from meditation feeling like we've just done this, you know, really difficult sort of job of work. Yeah. So the practice also includes the third and fourth noble truths. It includes seeing all these people, all these beings, you know, sort of being transformed by the Dharma. Yeah. And we can imagine them, yeah, if we like, completely awakened. So how we imagine them, yeah, I suppose the question is, you know, what does freedom, how do we imagine freedom? You know, if we think of people that we know and we just imagine them really free, how do they look? How do they act? If we imagine them really joyful, how do they look? How do they act? How do they move? How do they breathe even? And if we find it a bit difficult to do that, it might be worth checking whether we've really got a positive sense of how we could be, how we will be when we're transformed by the Dharma. Let's really start there, because that also will draw us on. And again, it will balance out any tendency to sort of dwell on the suffering side of things. So yes, when we're much further down the path, when our hearts are really open, when we're full of love, how are we going to feel? How are we going to look? How is our body going to be? How are we going to breathe? When we're really free, when we are liberated, when we're really clear about things, when we're not fooled by anything, when we just know how things are, how's that going to feel? So we could spend quite a lot of time just in practice, really getting a feeling for that, because it would really, you know, bring home to us, you know, why awakening is worth going for. Yeah. Often we just have a vague sense of, oh, I'm heading towards awakening, I'm heading towards enlightenment, and I'm heading towards, you know, developing compassion, but we don't make that concrete to ourselves. We don't make it specific. We don't really feel it. So it doesn't really motivate us. Yeah. So yeah, we could imagine that for ourselves as well as for others. Yeah. And yeah, if we then really have a clear sense of that, and we have our eyes on the prize, that will really draw us on in our practice. All right, I'll stop. Let's do some meditation before we finish. Just sitting open to experience. Connected to the earth. In a posture that supports relaxed awareness. Relaxed, alive, present. Present in the body. Experiencing the aliveness of it. with an open heart. Focusing in our heart center. And invoking, inviting a refuge. Our heart center like an open lotus, really welcoming all the qualities of enlightenment. Opening to the qualities of enlightenment, opening to being transformed by them. Offering them our breath, our breathing, as a means of transformation. So with the in-breath, the refuge takes away suffering, takes away limitation. Takes away all the barriers we put up that prevent us opening to life, seeing how things are, opening our heart. And with each out breath, there's a great outflowing of qualities. Transform our body, transform every aspect of ourselves deep into our being. And as these qualities set us free, how do we feel? Really bathing, soaking in the results of the transformation. And as we experience deep fulfillment, it's only natural for that to be shared with others. That freedom, that peace, that love. So with the breathing, the process includes more and more beings. And just as with us, we feel, we see with others, the barriers coming down, the fear, the craving, the confusion, all disappearing, all being taken away. And there's love, there's joy, there's deep knowing of how things are. There's freedom. The transformation shows in their bodies, in their faces, in the whole quality of the radiance, the energy that surrounds them. And there is no sense of us and them. Just the deepest connectedness. And when we're ready, relaxing. No need to make anything happen. And sharing the merits. May what we've seen in our meditation manifest for all beings. Okay, thank you for another day of practice. Really appreciated it. And we're halfway through. May we just build and build on what we've done so far. Okay, all the best to everyone, and see you tomorrow.
Thank you, Vessantara. See you tomorrow. Good night, everybody. Go well.
Thank you.
Thanks. That was fantastic.
Thanks, Satchinandi.
What a wonderful day. Thank you, Vessantara.